The night it happened, the first thing I noticed was the missing salt shaker. Every month, we had dinner at that same house, at that same table, with the same worn linen tablecloth that had a burn mark in the corner from a candle that got knocked over during Thanksgiving in 2018. Every single time, the salt shaker sat next to her dad's elbow. Always. That night, it was gone, and nobody else noticed. That's how I knew something was wrong before anyone spoke. The chairs creaked louder. The wine was already poured. Her sister brought a new guy, just a friend, she claimed, but he kept checking his watch like he'd rather be anywhere else. Her mom kept wiping down the already clean counters. And she had that look on her face again. The one I hadn't seen since last year, when I caught her deleting texts from a locked screen. And I sat there, picking at my roasted carrots, pretending not to notice the salt missing, pretending not to hear my heartbeat punching my ribs. Then her father said, "You want to say it now, or wait until after dessert?" The knife in her hand stopped halfway through the bread. She wiped it on her napkin, looked at me, not through me, at me, and said calmly, "I'm not coming home tonight." The words didn't hit me at first. Not fully. It was like watching a cup fall in slow motion and not reacting until it's already shattered. Someone at the table, her cousin, I think, choked on their wine. Her mother closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath. The man sitting next to her sister suddenly looked very, very interested in his water glass. I said nothing. I wasn't sure who she was talking to. She clarified, "I've been seeing someone. It started after the funeral. I didn't plan for it. But I'm not going to lie to myself anymore. After the funeral. Whose funeral? What did that have to do with anything?" I hadn't even stood up yet, and I could already feel the silence clawing at the edges of the room. No one moved. No one breathed. The air felt like wet paper on my skin. She reached into her coat pocket and set her house key on the table. Just a quiet little clink against the china. Still no salt shaker. And then she said, "Please don't make this dramatic." I didn't. I just stood up, pushed the chair back, and walked out the door. Into the cold. Into the dark. Into whatever was waiting for me now. I don't know how long I walked before I realized I still had my napkin clenched in my fist. It was stained with beet juice. That awful beet salad her aunt always brought, pretending it was some Eastern European delicacy passed down from ancient recipes, when really she just dumped it from a jar and tossed dill on top. The taste still lingered in my mouth, sour and metallic. It made my stomach turn. The wind hit my face like cold needles. I remember blinking hard because my eyes were stinging, not from tears, not yet, but from that sharp kind of January air that cuts through your sinuses like glass. I had no gloves. No plan. I passed the town's only stoplight and stood at the crosswalk, watching the green signal reflect off the wet pavement. It blinked and blinked, inviting me forward, and I just didn't move. The world felt paused. Not broken. Not exploded. Just eerily paused, like the second before a scream or the breath right before impact. And I stood there, while the light stayed green far longer than it should have. I wasn't sure if that was real or just how it felt inside my head. I replayed her words again. "I've been seeing someone. It started after the funeral." Whose funeral? No one had died recently in our immediate circle. Not that I could remember. Was it someone I didn't know? Someone she met there? That's when I realized something that should have hit me immediately. She'd been dressed in black 3 weeks ago. She said she was going to a memorial. I asked who passed. She said a colleague's mother. I didn't push. Why didn't I push? I always let things go. I always assumed the best. I always thought that love meant giving space, not asking too many questions, respecting silence. Now I wonder if silence is what they count on. People like her. People who know how to hide in plain sight. I crossed the street finally, when the light turned red and I didn't care anymore. I walked to the gas station, sat on the curb behind the dumpster, out of view. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because the idea of being seen made my skin crawl. I felt like a parody of a man. Like a sitcom punchline. He found out during dinner. Cue the laugh track. Cue the camera zoom on the stunned husband while someone delivers a cheesy one-liner. Except there was no punchline. Only a sharp ache spreading through my chest like a slow bruise. I checked my phone. 8 missed calls. 3 from her. 5 from her mom. I didn't open any of them. But the texts started rolling in as I sat there. 1 from her. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I panicked. I'll explain. Please just don't disappear. 1 from her mom. You left your coat. Do you want me to drop it off? 1 from an unknown number. Hey, we should probably talk. B. Just the initial. And that was the first moment it became real. Not just betrayal. Not just another man. A man who had my number. Who felt confident enough to text me. Who signed it like we were equals. I sat there, staring at the screen, and for the first time in the whole night, I laughed. It was a short, ugly laugh. Not from humor. From disbelief. From the absurdity of it all. And that's when I realized I didn't just walk out of that house. I walked out of reality as I knew it. And wherever I was now, nothing followed the rules anymore. I didn't go home that night. If you can even call it a home anymore. I drove. Not far, not fast, just far enough to make the familiar feel foreign. I ended up sleeping in my car at the edge of a dried-up lake that used to be a popular fishing spot before the algae took over. I cracked the window an inch because the windshield was fogging up, and I remember the sound of distant trucks on the highway. Ghosts passing through the dark, unaware they were driving past the funeral of a life I'd built without reading the fine print. I didn't sleep much. Mostly just stared at the ceiling of my car and wondered how you can miss someone who technically still exists. Not dead, not gone, just unreachable now. Like she'd changed the channel, and I was the static. I woke up stiff, sore, and hollow. It was barely light out when I finally decided to head back into town. Not to see her. I still didn't want to look her in the eye. But I needed my laptop, my passport, a few things from the closet I never thought I'd leave behind. And I needed to grab Fiddle, our dog. Yes, our dog, no matter what she'd probably argue. He was more mine than hers anyway. He used to sleep by my feet, not hers. He followed my car when we pulled into the driveway. He barked when she wore that perfume she claimed she bought for me, but always made him sneeze. When I got to the house, I parked down the street. I wasn't even sure if she'd be there. Maybe she had left already. Maybe Bennett was inside, drinking my coffee from the mug my brother gave me when I got the counseling job. Maybe he was wearing my t-shirt. Maybe he was petting my dog. But before I could knock or even open the door, I saw it. A folded piece of lined paper taped to the inside of the windshield of my car. The tape was that blue painter's kind, like someone had done it in a rush. I peeled it off slowly, looked around. No one was watching. At least, I didn't think so. The handwriting on the outside of the note wasn't hers. It wasn't Bennett's either. I recognized that. I knew it wasn't his, even though I hadn't seen his writing. I just knew. It was jagged, rushed, sharp like a kid trying to forge a parent's signature. The message was short. Just 5 words. Don't trust what she says. That was it. No signature. No explanation. I looked around again. The neighborhood was still half asleep. No joggers. No lawn sprinklers. Just quiet, cold, and the faint drip of someone's gutter in the distance. For a second, I thought it was some kind of joke. Maybe one of her weird friends. Or her sister, trying to stir more drama. But then I remembered what she said during dinner. It started after the funeral. Those words haunted me like a riddle carved into the walls of a burning house. I went inside without knocking. Used the key I still had on my chain, knowing full well it might not work for much longer. She wasn't there. The house smelled like lavender and something burnt. Maybe incense, maybe a failed candle attempt. The dog was gone. That hit me harder than I thought it would. His food bowl was missing too. His leash. His toys. No note. No. I took Fiddle. Hope you understand. Just gone. The bedroom looked staged. Like an open house. Bed made too perfectly. Her side of the closet half empty. Hangers swinging slightly like they'd just been disturbed. I didn't know what I was looking for until I opened my nightstand drawer and found another envelope. This one addressed to me. No tape. Just sitting there like it had been placed gently, like someone wanted me to find it at that exact moment. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, not handwritten. And what it said wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a confession. It was a set of instructions. And one line stood out among the rest, circled in red pen. If anyone asks, you never knew about the cabin. I stood there, holding the letter, my breath frozen in my chest, trying to remember something I wasn't supposed to forget. Something she once said during a fight. Something about a place up north. Somewhere she used to go when she needed space. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about her betrayal anymore. I was thinking about what she was hiding from. I don't know why I went. I could have thrown the note away. I could have chalked it up to emotional sabotage, a desperate act by a cheating spouse to deflect blame and create confusion. But the mention of the cabin snapped something awake in me. Not a memory, more like the shape of one. Something buried, pressed flat between the pages of a story I'd been told long ago and then told to forget. The drive north was foggy, both literally and metaphorically. The further I got from town, the less everything made sense. I passed a mile marker I didn't recognize. A diner with no cars in the lot, but steam on the windows. A gas station where the card reader rejected my debit 4 times before it suddenly worked without explanation. It felt like driving through a dream where the rules of time and distance had been subtly rearranged. I kept checking my GPS, but the signal kept blinking in and out, as if even the satellites weren't sure where I was heading. When I finally pulled off the road onto the gravel turn-in she'd once described, "You'll miss it if you're going too fast," my chest tightened. Not out of fear, out of something worse, anticipation. The kind you get before bad news. When you know the hammer's going to fall, but you don't know from where. The cabin was older than I expected. Not quaint, not rustic, just tired. The wood was faded, the paint on the doorframe peeling in sun-bleached strips. The curtains were drawn. No footprints in the snow, even around the porch, which made no sense unless someone had swept them or they were never there to begin with. My gut told me not to go in. Every cell in my body screamed, "Leave now. This isn't your mess to unravel." But I pushed the door open anyway, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. Dust, pine, and something faintly sour. Not rot, not death, but something forgotten. The inside was meticulously clean. Like, disturbingly clean. The floorboards had been polished. The dishes stacked. Even the fireplace had a neatly arranged pile of kindling beside it. I thought, no one lives here, but someone wants it ready, just in case. There were no personal items. No clothes. No mail. But the walls were lined with photos. Hundreds of them. At first, I thought they were of strangers, camping trips, birthdays, quiet moments on porches at sunset, but then I spotted her. My wife. Younger. Smiling in some of them. Staring dead into the lens in others. Her expression changed in every photo, but one thing stayed the same. She wasn't with me in a single one of them. Different men. Different friends. Even different hairstyles. All of it wrong. None of these memories were mine. I stood in front of one particular picture, a picnic scene by a lake, and stared at the man she was sitting next to. He looked familiar, but not in the usual way. More like a face from a dream. His arm was around her waist, her head on his shoulder, and both of them were looking at something off camera, like they were expecting someone to arrive. I took a photo of that picture with my phone. The screen flickered, glitched, then went black. I stood there in the silence of that too-perfect cabin, surrounded by ghosts I didn't recognize, and it hit me. This wasn't her secret hideaway. This wasn't where she went to escape me. This was a vault, a curated museum of alternate lives, timelines she never told me about. And then I noticed the back door was open. Not ajar. Wide open. Just swinging gently, as if someone had walked through a few minutes ago and forgotten to close it behind them. I didn't breathe. I listened. No wind. No birds. Just a long, quiet creak as the door moved in rhythm with the cold air outside. I stepped toward it. Slowly. Every footstep felt louder than it should have. The snow just beyond the threshold was untouched. No prints going out. No prints coming in. But on the floor beside the open door, there was a scarf. Mine. One I hadn't worn since last winter. One that went missing after a visit to her mother's house. I had forgotten it existed. I picked it up, and underneath it was a flash drive. Unlabeled. Just sitting there, like a gift from the abyss. I didn't plug it in right away. I couldn't. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, the flash drive burning a hole in my palm like it had a pulse of its own. The cabin behind me felt like it was breathing, creaking softly, as though it was aware I had taken something that didn't belong to me. I half expected someone to come running out after me, yelling for the drive back. But the forest stayed still. The snow remained untouched. The world was pretending nothing happened. I drove to the public library 3 towns over. I didn't want to use my laptop. I didn't want that thing anywhere near my personal files, near my photos, near my logins. I didn't even trust public Wi-Fi. So I found an old Dell computer in the corner of the library, surrounded by dusty encyclopedias and a dried-up plant in a chipped ceramic pot. I inserted the drive. No files. Just one folder named Look_Now. Inside were 3 files. 2 video files and 1 audio file. No labels. Just timestamps. I opened the audio file first. At first, all I heard was static. Faint, fluttering white noise that reminded me of rain on a window. Then, breathing. Not mine. Not close. Faint. Measured. Then a voice. Female. Calm. Soft in a way that immediately felt manipulative. Not seductive, just carefully crafted. If you're listening to this, you've found the cabin. I told you not to go there. I hoped you wouldn't. But I know you. You were always curious where you should have been cautious. The voice wasn't Mara's. It was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Somewhere between her sister and someone I might have heard on a voicemail years ago. A ghost wearing someone else's vocal cords. She continued. You probably think this is about betrayal. About infidelity. But it's not. That was just the crack in the glass. What you're seeing now is the shatter. There are parts of her you've never met. People she's been with. Things she's done. And you need to ask yourself if you really want to know where it ends. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. The voice wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It was concerned. Like it was warning me from a place of genuine empathy. Then, more static. A deep breath. And finally, whatever you do, don't watch the second video alone. Click. That was it. My hands were trembling. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting someone to be watching me from the rows of ancient nonfiction books. The library was dead quiet. Even the printer behind the front desk had gone still. I opened the first video. It was grainy, shot on a security cam, or maybe an old handheld recorder. Night vision quality. A woman was sitting on a park bench, alone. At first, I thought it was Mara. The posture was hers. The hair, the coat. But then I saw the timestamp. October 18th. That same day, she told me she was at a friend's wedding 3 hours away. In the video, the woman was just sitting. Not scrolling. Not talking. Just staring forward like she was waiting for something to arrive. After 2 full minutes of stillness, a figure appeared beside her. Male. Tall. Wearing a hooded jacket. They didn't greet each other. They didn't speak. He simply sat next to her. They didn't even look at one another. And then, slowly, at the same time, they turned to face the camera. As if they knew I was watching. I slammed the spacebar. My heart was hammering in my chest. My vision narrowed. I minimized the window and stared at the desktop. Sweat pooled under my arms. I hadn't even touched the second video yet. The one they told me not to watch alone. So I did something I still can't explain. I transferred the files to a burner phone, walked back to my car, and drove straight to my brother's place. I hadn't seen him in 2 months. We'd fought over something stupid, a lost wedding invite, I think, but he opened the door like nothing had ever happened. I told him I needed to show him something. He didn't ask questions. Just followed me into his basement where the light was dim and the silence thick. I opened the second video, and I swear to you on everything I love. What I saw in that video changed how I looked at Mara forever. Not because of what she did, but because of who else was in it. I wish I could say the video started normally, that it opened with context or sound or even a timestamp. But it didn't. It dropped us straight into motion, frantic, uneven, like it had already been playing for hours before we pressed play. My brother and I sat on opposite ends of the couch in his dark basement, our faces dimly lit by the phone screen. The video showed a hallway. Narrow. White walls. No windows. Just a single door at the end, slightly ajar. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then the camera shifted, not from editing, but like someone holding it moved closer. The breathing picked up. Shaky, rhythmic. I thought at first it was Mara holding the phone, but then I heard her voice. Not from behind the camera, from inside the room at the end of the hall. It was unmistakable. She was crying. Not loudly. Not in that theatrical, heaving way people do when they want to be seen. This was quieter. Raw. Like someone who had already broken and was now just leaking grief in silence. Then, from behind the camera, a man spoke. Calm, flat, almost bored. Are you ready to tell him yet? I froze. My brother leaned forward. We didn't recognize the voice. Mara responded. He'll leave if I do. You want him to stay? Silence. Then, no. That no stuck with me. Not because of what she said, but how. Like she'd already decided long before the question was asked. Like she'd already left, even while she was still there. The video moved again. The camera entered the room. It was a small, windowless space with gray carpet and a single lamp on the floor. Mara sat cross-legged on the bed, wearing a black sweatshirt I hadn't seen before. Her face was tired, her eyes red, but there was something else, a flicker of recognition as the camera approached, like she knew this was being recorded for me. Like she wanted me to see it, someday, just not yet. Then the camera tilted toward the man, and my blood ran cold. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, wearing a dark shirt and a leather bracelet I remembered from somewhere I couldn't quite place. He looked older than me. rough around the edges. But it wasn't until he turned slightly toward the lens that I felt something inside me twist. I had seen that face before. Not recently, not in passing, not even in person, but in photos. In our wedding photos. Behind us. Standing near the edge of a group shot. Wearing sunglasses, holding a drink, slightly out of focus. I had looked at that photo a dozen times. Maybe more. I always thought he was a distant cousin of her mother's or some random plus one. Mara never mentioned him. Not once. But now, here he was. In a room with her. Filming her. Asking questions like a handler, not a partner. She looked at him the way people look at something they owe. Not fear. Not affection. Debt. He crouched beside her and said, "You know this has to end. If you keep dragging it out, he's going to start asking the wrong questions." And she said, without blinking, "He already is." My brother hit pause. We sat there in silence. The kind of silence that feels like a third person entered the room, and neither of us wanted to look at them. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. I shook my head. I didn't have an answer. My body felt like it had been hollowed out and filled with sand. Heavy, sluggish, unstable. I scrolled through the video, skipping ahead. The scene shifted, same man, different room. This time Mara wasn't there. But someone else was. Me. Asleep. On my side of the bed. Mouth slightly open. The timestamp in the corner read 2:14 a.m. Whoever was filming was inside our bedroom. The video only lasted 10 seconds. The camera zoomed in slightly on my face. Then cut to black. That was it. No narration. No context. Just proof. Proof that I was never alone when I thought I was. Proof that someone had been watching us. Watching me. I turned to my brother. I need to know who he is. I need to know where this ends. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly and said, "Then we start with the wedding." We went through the wedding photos like investigators reviewing security footage from a crime that hadn't been reported yet. My brother pulled out the external drive with all the high-resolution files our photographer had given us, and we loaded them onto his flat screen with the same reverence you'd give to an autopsy. I never thought I'd look at my own wedding day and feel nauseous. I never thought I'd see the smiles, the dances, the toasts, and feel like I was watching a stage production, where I was the only actor who didn't know the script was a lie. We started with the group photos. There he was, always just at the edge of the frame, always looking in a different direction, never centered, never interacting with anyone, but always present. The man from the video, the man who'd been filming Mara, the man I now knew had stood just feet away from me on the day I said, "I do." We zoomed in on his face, ran it through image search engines. Nothing. No hits. My brother tried some old contacts he had from a job he'd worked doing digital archiving. Asked if anyone could run a facial scan through law enforcement grade tools. But even if they did, I knew it wouldn't come back with a name. Something about this felt deeper than criminal records or social media traces. Like he wasn't just hiding, like he'd been removed from view years ago. We opened the video files from the wedding reception, the raw ones the photographer never edited. And there he was again, in motion this time, walking across the background with a plate of food, leaning against the bar, talking to no one. Then, something truly chilling, standing alone in the garden, watching Mara through the window. The timestamp said it was during our first dance. I stared at the screen for a long time. I felt cold all over. Not just because he was there, but because she looked at him. Only for a second. But it was there. A glance. A flicker of recognition. While I held her waist and smiled like a man who thought he knew what love was. My brother paused the video and asked, "You want to stop?" "No," I said. "Keep going." Because somewhere in this mess, there had to be a pattern. A connection. A reason why none of this made sense. And yet somehow, made too much sense all at once. That's when we noticed something neither of us had caught before. In the corner of one of the frames, a shot from later in the evening, long after most of the guests had gone home, the stranger wasn't alone. He was sitting at a table with Mara's mother, laughing, drinking, her hand on his forearm. It made no sense. Her mother was conservative, controlling, overbearing to a fault. She'd hated every man Mara dated before me, and even once told me privately that I was a relief. The idea that she would casually sit and drink with a man who wasn't even supposed to be there broke every part of the picture I thought I had. I called her immediately. She didn't answer. I tried again. Still nothing. So I drove. It was after midnight, but I didn't care. My brother offered to come with me. I told him no. I needed to do this alone. I needed to look her mother in the eye and ask, calmly but directly, Who is he? And why did you lie? Her house was dark when I got there, but not quiet. I heard music. Soft, warbling, old jazz playing through the windows. Something scratchy and distorted, like it was playing on a record player that had seen too many winters. I knocked on the door. No response. I knocked again, harder. A light came on in the hallway. Then a shadow moved across the window. Finally, the door creaked open. She was standing there in a robe. Her face pale. Her eyes heavy. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even ask what I was doing there. She just said, "You went to the cabin, didn't you?" I nodded. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she looked like she aged 10 years in front of me. "Come in," she said. "But once I tell you what you want to know, you can't go back to who you were before." I stepped inside. The music grew louder. The air was thick with something, not smoke, not perfume, just history. And as she closed the door behind me, I saw something behind the hallway mirror. A second reflection. Not mine, not hers, but his. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I was hallucinating. The mirror shimmered slightly in the dim hallway light, and behind it, a second reflection, that man. Standing there, still, watching. But when I turned to face the hallway, no one was there. Mara's mother walked past me calmly, not even glancing toward the mirror. "He's not here," she said flatly. "He hasn't been for a long time. Not physically, at least. But he still lingers where he's been allowed." I followed her to the kitchen. She poured tea. Poured one for herself too, but didn't drink it. She looked tired, as if she'd been carrying a secret that had rusted into her bones. "You've been asking the wrong questions," she said. "You think this is about cheating, about betrayal. But this goes further back. Mara didn't fall in love with someone else. She fell under someone else's control, and she's been trying to break free ever since." It didn't make sense. None of it. But she saw the confusion in my eyes and explained. The man, the one in the videos and the photos in the cabin, had once been close to their family. A childhood friend of her late uncle. Someone who helped during Mara's teenage years when things got difficult at home. A protector at first. Then something else. Something darker. No one ever reported anything. There was nothing specific. But little by little, he became a shadow in their lives. And Mara, at some point, felt trapped by him. By memories, by manipulation, by guilt. She met me during the time she was trying to escape. And for a while, she believed she could. But she never really severed the tie. She just hid it. He never stopped watching her, her mother said, staring at the steam rising from her untouched cup. And I never stopped being afraid. I sat there for a long time, letting that sink in. All the nights she'd been distant. All the strange behavior I chalked up to stress or just being Mara. All the times she left the room to take a call and came back visibly shaken. None of it was about me. And that's what finally broke me open. Not pain. Not anger. Compassion. I had spent days unraveling the mystery like a man solving a puzzle of betrayal, convinced I was the victim. But the truth was, I had loved someone who had never been taught what real safety felt like. And instead of asking how I could help, I had let my ego narrate the story. So I asked her mother the only question that mattered now. "Where is she?" She looked up. She checked herself into a place 2 days ago. Voluntarily. She said she needed to finally face it all. Alone. She didn't want to drag anyone else through the ending. I asked for the name of the place. She gave it to me. I didn't visit her that week. Or the week after. I gave her the space she clearly needed. I spent that time getting my own clarity. Therapy. Long walks. A letter I never mailed. A playlist of songs I never played. And then, after 2 months, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a hand-drawn image of a small dog, curled in a blanket. On the back, a note. "He doesn't own me anymore. I'm learning what that means. I hope you are too. Thank you for seeing me. M." I cried when I read it. Not out of sadness. Out of release. The truth is, not every marriage ends because someone stopped loving. Sometimes it ends because they finally started loving themselves. Today, I live in a new town. I have a tiny apartment above a bookstore and a golden retriever named Button who likes to steal my socks. I still work with kids, still believe in listening, still hate confrontation, but I've learned to speak when it matters. And I don't check the mirrors anymore, because I know who I am now. And I'm not afraid of what's behind me.